Kola woke to the humid weight of the lecky morning and the sound of his own heavy breathing. It was 6:45 a.m., and panic was already a dull ache behind his eyes. He sat up, pushing aside the crumpled architectural blueprints that had served as his blanket. The apartment was a disaster. Since Bisi left a year ago, the sleek modernist space he designed had become a cluttered graveyard of good intentions. Unwashed plates towered in the sink, files spilled off the dining table, and a faint stale odor clung to the air. He stumbled toward Tolu's room, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. Tolu, 8 years old, was already sitting up in bed, quiet and too still. "Morning, champ," Kola muttered, trying for a bright tone he didn't feel. Tolu looked away. "My uniforms are dirty, Daddy." Kola froze. He hadn't done the laundry. He had promised Tolu he would do it Thursday night, but he'd stayed up working on the new commercial tower proposal until 3 a.m. He raced to the laundry hamper, pulling out the stiff, grass-stained pile. "Give me 5 minutes. I'll spot clean one, maybe hang-dry it with the hairdryer." Tolu shook her head, tears welling. "It won't work. The maths test is today. Mrs. Okoro said we have to be smart and ready." Kola knew what that meant. Being smart and ready meant wearing the sharp-pressed school uniform, not a regular dress. He opened the fridge, a single expired carton of milk, 2 wrinkled bell peppers. Nothing else. He swore under his breath and grabbed the remaining 2 slices of bread, tossing them onto the stove. He managed to burn the toast while scrambling eggs, filling the kitchen with acrid smoke. Kola slammed the pan down. He felt the threads of his patience snap one by one. He was failing. He was drowning. Tolu finally appeared, dressed in a muted floral dress, her hair unbrushed, her shoulders slumped. She looked smaller than 8 years old. Kola couldn't meet her eyes. His guilt was a heavy, suffocating blanket. "I'm sorry, Tolu. I'm so sorry," he whispered, quickly brushing her hair back into a clumsy ponytail. She didn't respond. She just picked at the edges of the burnt egg. The emotional distance between them was vast, a canyon created by his exhaustion and her quiet disappointment. Kola hated himself for making her feel this way. The Lagos traffic was a predictable nightmare, slow and hot. They drove in silence. Tolu stared out the window, avoiding his gaze. He pictured her walking into school, standing out, feeling the shame that he had caused. When they finally reached the school gate, Kola pulled over. "Have a great test, sweetie. I love you." Tolu opened the car door. She didn't look back. She didn't say goodbye. She just ran, her head bowed, disappearing into the crowd of uniformed children. The sudden emptiness in the car was deafening. Kola slumped back in his seat, the image of her lonely figure the only thing he could see. He had to stop this. He had to fix it. But how? Kola watched his daughter disappear and pulled the car forward, signaling to merge back into the relentless Lagos flow. Before he could move 2 car lengths, a black SUV cut him off, and the driver's door opened. It was Tunde, his best friend and business partner. Tunde walked over, leaning down to the passenger window. His expression was serious, devoid of his usual cheerful cynicism. Tunde saw everything. He always did. "Kola, what is going on?" Tunde asked, his voice low but firm. He glanced back at the school gate, then at Kola's exhausted face. Tolu was out of uniform. She looked withdrawn. Kola felt his defenses rise. "It's fine, Tunde. Just a rough morning. Forgot the laundry. The usual." "The usual? You mean the usual since Bisi decided to find herself?" Tunde didn't wait for an answer. "Let's go. I need coffee and you need to talk. My office is closer." Tunde followed Kola back to his lecky apartment. The moment Tunde stepped inside, his eyes widened slightly. He didn't have to say anything. The apartment spoke for itself. The organized chaos Kola had learned to live in looked alien and depressing through Tunde's fresh eyes. "Kola," Tunde started, picking up a day-old takeaway bag from the sofa. "Look at this place. Look at you. You're running a multi-million Naira architectural firm, and you can't manage a laundry basket or 2 meals a day." Kola ran a hand over his face. I know. It's hard. I'm trying to be everything for her, the work, the school, the home. There aren't enough hours. You are trying to be both father and mother, and you're failing at both because you're doing it alone," Tunde said, sitting down heavily on a stool. Tolu is suffering. I see it in her eyes. The laughter is gone, Kola. She's retreating. The accusation was painful because it was true. Kola had watched his vibrant, happy girl become quiet and distant. So what do you want me to do? Quit my job? I have to pay the bills, Tunde. I have to keep this roof over her head. No, you need help at home. You need stability, a routine, someone who can handle the house, cook, and make sure Tolu has a calm, structured presence when you're building your empire. Kola pushed back instantly. No, absolutely not. I am not bringing a stranger into this house, not after Bisi. The last thing I need is another woman walking in, acting like family, and then walking out again. I'll hire a cleaner, but that's it. Tunde stood up, frustration clear on his face. This isn't about your pride or your divorce trauma, Kola. This is about Tolu's well-being. A cleaner wipes surfaces. A caregiver provides routine. I have a cousin. She runs an excellent agency. She can send someone reliable, someone vetted. You don't have to sleep with them, Kola. It's a job. Kola leaned against the cold kitchen counter, breathing deep. The thought of a stranger in his space felt like an invasion. But the image of Tolu's small, bowed head that morning returned. She looked ashamed. That image broke his resolve. Fine, Kola rasped, giving in. Set up an interview. But I set the rules. Professional, no emotional entanglement. If anything is out of line, they're out. Tunde's tight shoulders relaxed. He smiled, but it was subdued. Good, you just did the best thing for your daughter. I'll call her now. The following week dragged by, tense and miserable. Kola tried harder, forcing himself to prepare clothes the night before and shopping for groceries, but the effort exhausted him, leaving him brittle and irritable by evening. He resented needing help. He saw it as a public admission of his failure to Bisi, to Tunde, and to himself. On Wednesday afternoon, Kola arrived home slightly early, hoping to salvage some quality time with Tolu. He found her sitting on the edge of her bed, her homework scattered around her. Her face was blotchy, and she was clearly trying to hide her tears. Tolu, what's wrong? Kola knelt beside her. She tried to push him away. Nothing, Daddy. Leave me alone. No, tell me, did something happen at school? Tolu sniffled, twisting her uniform skirt. Chinedu called my dress ugly last week. He said I look like I live in a dumpster. And today, Mrs. Okoro asked if I was getting enough rest, and all the parents looked at me funny when you picked me up late. The words were a physical punch to Kola's gut. Dumpster. He knew Chinedu's mother. She was always immaculately dressed, perfectly put together. Kola realized that Tolu wasn't just embarrassed. She was being judged, and she was absorbing that judgment as her own fault. That's not true, honey. This is a beautiful home. You are beautiful, Kola insisted, hugging her tightly. But Mum used to make my lunch look nice. Tolu whispered into his shoulder, her voice cracking. She always remembered the special hairbands. She made you smile too. Now everything is just loud. The mention of Bisi was a double-edged sword. Bisi's absence had created the noise, but his inability to manage the aftermath had magnified it. Kola pulled back, looking into his daughter's eyes. They were wide, mournful pools, reflecting his own exhaustion. This was his low point. His pride was literally causing his daughter pain. He couldn't keep sacrificing her stability on the altar of his own trauma. That evening, Tunde called. Bisi has someone. Name is Ife. She's worked with 2 high-profile families in Ikoyi and has stellar references. Can you interview her tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Kola looked around his living room, a stack of bills, a forgotten mug with a dried ring of tea. The silence of the house felt desolate. Yes, Kola said, the word heavy and flat. Send her over, but tell her I'm busy. The interview is 15 minutes maximum. He hung up, feeling a reluctant shift inside him. He hadn't chosen this path. He felt forced into it, but for Tolu, he would endure a stranger's presence in his home. He just prayed this Ife was reliable. He prayed she wouldn't hurt Tolu again by leaving. Ife arrived promptly at 10 a.m. the next morning. Kola was sitting at the dining table, surrounded by documents, purposefully trying to look overwhelmed and important. He opened the door and found himself staring at the woman standing on his doorstep. She was neatly dressed in a simple blouse and skirt, her hair pulled back tightly. Her eyes were gentle, calm, and utterly familiar. Kola frowned, trying to place her. I'm Kola. You must be Ife. Yes, Mr. Akinlaja, thank you for seeing me, she replied, her voice soft and measured. Wait, Kola said, holding up a hand. I know you. The school gate. About 6 months ago, you were helping Tolu. Ife nodded once, a faint trace of a smile touching her lips. Yes, sir. You were stuck in the backup near the roundabout. Tolu was getting upset because the gate was closing, and I was waiting for my previous employer's child. I just helped her sit down and breathe for a moment until you arrived. Kola remembered. He had been shouting into his phone, frantic and sweating, while this woman had quietly taken control of the small crisis, talking to Tolu in a soothing voice. He'd barely looked at her then, but the memory was strong. That small act of unsolicited kindness disarmed his professional defenses instantly. He led her into the living room. The interview was nothing like he planned. He asked about references, and she produced a pristine folder. She spoke about her experience, detailing her focus on creating routine and respecting family dynamics, especially after transitions. A child who has experienced a change needs one thing above all: consistency, Ife explained, her hands folded neatly in her lap. They need to know that even if everything else is uncertain, their lunch will be packed, their clothes will be clean, and they will hear a friendly voice when they wake up. She paused, her gaze steady. I understand the importance of a secure home because I lost mine young. Both my parents passed away when I was 12. I was a poor orphan and briefly homeless before I found work and stability. I know what it means to feel like you have nothing solid beneath your feet. That experience is why I respect the routine and safety of families so much. Kola found himself confessing. He didn't mean to, but her lack of judgment made the words spill out. He explained how Bisi had left, casually, to find herself, and how the apartment had become a metaphor for his emotional state. When he finished, Ife didn't offer sympathy or blame Bisi. She simply said, "The emotional work is yours, Mr. Akinlaja. My job is the practical work. I can handle the routine, the care, and the house. Children need routine, care, and love. I understand that." Her sincerity was a tonic. Kola made a decision instantly, discarding his professional pretense. "Ife, you're hired. Starting tomorrow morning, I need you here by 6 a.m. He stood up, signaling the end of the interview. "But there are rules, strict ones. This is a professional relationship only. Focus on Tolu and the house. No interference in my personal life. We maintain clear boundaries. Is that understood?" Ive stood up, meeting his eyes. "Perfectly understood, sir. I respect your rules completely. Thank you for the opportunity." Kola watched her go, the feeling of dread replaced by a fragile hope. He had let a stranger in, but she was a stranger he already knew to be kind. Ive's first morning was a quiet revolution. Kola's alarm went off at 6 a.m., but instead of the usual rush and panic, he smelled something warm and buttery. He walked out of his room to find Ife already in the kitchen. She wasn't rushing. She was calmly flipping light, golden pancakes onto a stack, steam rising gently into the morning air. The sink was empty. The countertop was wiped down. The breakfast nook, usually buried under mail, was clear, set with 2 small plates and a pitcher of freshly squeezed orange juice. Kola stopped in the doorway, staring. You finished the dishes already?" "Good morning, sir." "Yes." "Tolu will be up in a few minutes. I have her uniform ready on her bed. I managed to wash and dry 2 of the simpler ones last night." I've placed a warm plate of pancakes in front of him. "Please eat. You need the energy." He sat down, stunned. He hadn't realized how long it had been since he had a proper breakfast that wasn't burnt. The pancakes were perfect, soft and sweet. Tolu walked into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She was wearing her freshly laundered uniform, crisp and neat. She stopped when she saw Ive. Her expression was guarded, suspicious. "Good morning, Tolu. I packed your lunch. There's an encouraging note inside," Ife said gently, handing her a brightly colored lunchbox. Tolu took the box and opened it, peeking inside. Kola watched the stiffness leave his daughter's shoulders as she saw the perfectly cut sandwich and the small piece of fresh fruit. Ife had established a routine in the span of 30 minutes. There was no shouting, no urgency, just a steady, calm rhythm. Kola drove Tolu to school that day, arriving early. Tolu looked confident in her uniform, and when she got out of the car, she actually paused, turning back toward him. "Bye, Daddy. Thank you for the pancakes," she said softly, then smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Kola watched her walk into the gate, no longer bowed or ashamed. He drove to his office feeling a lightness he hadn't experienced in 12 months. It was the relief of a responsibility lifted, not because he was careless, but because he was finally sharing the load. When Kola returned home that evening, the transformation was complete. The air smelled of wood polish and a goosey stew. His scattered blueprints were stacked neatly on his desk. A small potted flower sat on the window ledge. The chaos had been quietly replaced by order. More importantly, he heard it. Tolu's genuine ringing laughter coming from the living room. Kola stopped, leaning against the wall, listening to the sound. It was the sound of a healed home, a sound he had forgotten existed. Eve had not only cleaned the house, she had swept the darkness out of the corners. The initial relief deepened into a profound gratitude over the next few weeks. Eve was a presence of unwavering stability. She moved through the house like a ghost, quietly fixing things, anticipating needs, and running the household with invisible efficiency. The most dramatic change, however, was in Tolu. At first, Tolu had treated Ife with a detached politeness, still wary of any new relationship that might vanish. Ife respected the distance. She never pushed, never tried to be overfamiliar, and never attempted to replace the mother Tolu still mourned. Instead, Ife simply showed up. Every morning, Ife would sit with Tolu while she ate breakfast, not talking much, but always listening if Tolu spoke. Before school, she would sit on Tolu's bed and carefully braid her hair, telling her quiet stories about her own childhood in the village. One afternoon, Kola walked into Tolu's room and found Ife sitting on the floor with Tolu, surrounded by maths books. Tolu was frowning at a particularly difficult algebra equation. "Look, Tolu," Ife was saying patiently, "it's like baking. We know the final number, the whole cake. We know you need 3 scoops of flour, but we don't know how much sugar, the X. We just have to reverse engineer the recipe, step by step." Tolu's frown softened into concentration. Ife had turned a terrifying abstract concept into a fun, relatable puzzle. 30 minutes later, Kola overheard Tolu shout, "I did it! I found the X." Tolu turned and grinned at Ife, throwing her arms around the young woman's neck. "Thank you, Auntie Ife. I'm smart." Kola stood outside the door, watching the spontaneous, genuine affection. Tolu had instinctively given Ife the title of Auntie, a family role, a bridge between friend and parent. It was the first time Kola had felt truly overwhelmed since Bisi left. But this time, the feeling was one of hope, not despair. He saw the small, consistent acts of kindness everywhere, encouraging notes tucked into Tolu's lunchbox, a favorite toy repaired and left on her pillow, a new storybook purchased with Ife's own money. Tolu's smile returned full force. She started talking about school again. She laughed often. She stopped hiding in her room after school and started doing her homework at the dining table. The heavy sadness that had clung to her like a shadow lifted, piece by piece. Ife was the gentle anchor, the consistent kindness that Tolu needed to feel safe again. Kola realized that Ife wasn't just a caregiver, she was a quiet healer. She hadn't fixed his life, but she had fundamentally repaired Tolu's world. The growing connection between Kola and Ife was gradual, built in the quiet moments of the evening after Tolu was asleep. At first, their interactions were limited to polite exchanges about schedules, grocery lists, and Tolu's progress. Kola always maintained the formal distance, addressing her as Ife and expecting the reciprocal sir. But the professional wall started to crumble. One evening, Kola was in the kitchen, struggling to make coffee. Ife had just finished cleaning up and was heading to her modest room. She stopped, seeing his weary struggle. "You look exhausted, sir," she noted, her eyes crinkling with quiet concern. "Let me make you a cup. You use far too much coffee, by the way. It will burn out the machine." Kola smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile. "I need the caffeine. I'm chasing deadlines. And please, Ife, it's Kola. Only my clients call me sir." Ife paused. "Kola," she repeated, tasting the name, a small acknowledgement of the boundary shifting. Over the next few weeks, Their small conversations grew into shared, honest moments. Kola started to open up, driven by her steady, non-judgmental presence. He confided the full, raw pain of Bisi's departure. She just wanted more. She said she felt stifled, that she needed to find her truth overseas. She left her child and her life for a vague idea of freedom without looking back. His voice was laced with the bitterness that he had been curdling inside him for a year. Ife listened, stirring her tea. She didn't offer clichés or toxic positivity. She simply acknowledged his pain. It is a terrible thing when someone chooses themselves over the family they built, Kola. I'm sorry you and Tolu went through that. Her validation, her refusal to minimize his abandonment, was profoundly comforting. Kola realized he hadn't been able to truly vent his sorrow until now. He learned small things about Ife, too. She was from a modest family, the eldest of 3 siblings. She was working to save money to go back to school to study early childhood education. Her dream wasn't to be a nanny forever, but a teacher. She possessed a deep, inherent respect for family bonds because she grew up honoring them. Kola started staying home more in the evenings. Instead of hiding in his study, he would sit in the living room, ostensibly reading, but really watching Ife interact with Tolu. He saw the kindness, the integrity, the quiet strength. He noticed how her eyes would flicker up and catch his sometimes, and the small warm wave that would pass between them before she quickly returned to her duties. He had started seeing her not as the help, but as a beautiful, resilient woman who had rebuilt his home. The professional wall was now porous, soft. He knew he was drawn to her. He was falling, slowly and certainly, into a feeling he hadn't thought he'd ever feel again. The professional lines officially blurred one rainy Saturday afternoon, 5 months after Ife started. The heavy tropical rain had trapped Kola and Tolu indoors. Kola had finished work early and was, sitting in the living room, trying to force himself to read a novel, but his eyes kept drifting toward the sofa. Ife was there, curled up next to Tolu, who had her head resting on Ife's shoulder. Ife was reading a well-worn copy of a Nigerian folktale, her voice melodic and soothing. Tolu was utterly relaxed, a picture of absolute contentment. The warmth radiating from the pair was almost visible, a quiet bubble of peace in the middle of the stormy day. Kola watched them, a deep, heavy sigh escaping his chest. This was it. This was what a home felt like, not a clean apartment, but a space filled with shared stories, safety, and physical closeness. Ife had created this feeling using nothing but consistency and kindness. In that moment, Kola stopped denying his feelings. He accepted the truth. He was in love with Ife. It wasn't the fiery, dramatic passion he'd shared with Bisi. This was deeper, rooted in gratitude, shared struggle, and mutual respect. It was a love built on the foundation of seeing the true character of a person during a crisis. He had fallen in love with the woman who rebuilt his daughter's heart. The realization brought both terror and euphoria. He had broken his own cardinal rule, the one designed to protect him from getting hurt again. But protecting himself meant sacrificing the possibility of this kind of quiet happiness. When the story was over, Tolu stood up, stretching. Ife looked across the room and caught Kola's eye. This time, he didn't look away or pretend to read. He held her gaze, and the professional distance evaporated completely, replaced by a deep, mutual understanding. That was a lovely story, Ife, Kola said, his voice husky. It is one of Tolu's favorites. Ife replied, a soft blush rising in her cheeks. She knew he wasn't just talking about the story. The following morning, Kola felt compelled to share more of his past, hoping to gauge her reaction. He told her about his parents, his dreams for his architectural firm, and how Bisi had always considered his Lagos life a temporary stop before the real life in London. Ife listened, always patient. You built something real here, Kola. A life, a daughter, a respected business. That is far more real than searching for a feeling across the ocean. Her words cemented his new resolve. The past was Bisi. The future, the true family he wanted, was sitting right here. He dared to imagine a future where Ife wasn't just Auntie Ife or the help, but a permanent part of their family. The house, once heavy and lonely, now felt light and hopeful, pregnant with possibility. The quiet rhythm of their life was brutally disrupted on a Tuesday evening. Kola was working in his study. Ife was helping Tolu finish a book report at the dining table. The phone rang, displaying an unknown international number. Kola answered, expecting a client. "Hello, Kola, it's Bisi." The voice, familiar and confident, ripped open old wounds and scattered the peace he had built. Kola's hand tightened on the phone, his knuckles white. "Bisi, what do you want?" he managed, his voice strained. "Oh, nothing dramatic," she said, her tone casually dismissive, as if she hadn't abandoned them. "I'm back in Lagos, just got in this morning. I'm settled in Ikoyi. I want to see Tolu. I'll come by your place tomorrow evening around 6. Make sure the child is ready." She didn't ask. She informed him. Her sense of entitlement, even after a year of complete silence, was breathtaking. "You can't just... You don't get to demand things, Bisi. Where have you been?" Kola fought to keep his voice down, aware of Tolu in the next room. "Don't be difficult, Kola. I'm her mother. I missed her. A year is enough time for you to calm down. I'll see you tomorrow." And she hung up. Kola stared at the dead phone, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was a storm of fear, anger, and confusion. He didn't want Tolu hurt again. He didn't want the instability Bisi brought with her dramatic entrance. Ife appeared in the study doorway, drawn by the sudden, tense silence. "Kola, is everything all right?" He looked up at her, his face a mask of distress. It was Bisi. "She's back. She's coming tomorrow. She just announced it." Eve walked into the room, her calm presence instantly easing the tension by a fraction. She sat down opposite him. "She's coming to see Tolu?" Ife asked, her expression serious. "Yes. She's just going to sweep in here, full of apologies and promises, and then she'll leave again and Tolu will be shattered. I won't let her hurt my daughter again." Kola leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. Ive placed a gentle, steady hand on his arm, a completely non-professional gesture. "We will stand by Tolu, Kola, you and I. We will be here when she leaves, and we will help Tolu process it. Don't panic. We are her constant now." Her quiet resolve was exactly what he needed. Kola felt a wave of love for her, a fierce appreciation for the woman who saw his fear and didn't run. They were a team. Bisi arrived precisely at 6:05 p.m. the next day. She didn't knock. She used her old code, which Kola hadn't changed, and walked right in. She was a glamorous storm of expensive perfume and tailored fabrics, looking effortlessly put together. She swept into the living room, her eyes immediately scanning the space, which was now warm and filled with light, not clutter. Then she saw Ife. Ife was sitting on the sofa, helping Tolu with a coloring book, looking neat and unassuming. Bisi's face tightened. She didn't acknowledge Ife, she simply sized her up with open contempt. "Tolu," Bisi exclaimed, her voice loud and dramatic. Tolu looked up, the coloring pencil falling from her hand. Shock, confusion, and then a flash of desperate hope crossed her face. "Mummy?" In an instant, Tolu ran. She flew into Bisi's arms, clinging fiercely to the idea of the mother she had missed. Bisi hugged her tightly, playing the role of the returning hero perfectly. "Oh, my beautiful girl, look how big you are," Bisi murmured, then pulled back, turning her full attention to Kola. "Kola, darling, I'm so happy to be home. It's been too long." She turned back to the sofa, spotting Ife still sitting there. Her smile vanished. "You can leave now. Help? Kola, maybe you can send her away so we can talk like a family. We have things to discuss." Eve rose quietly, her composure unshaken, and disappeared into the kitchen. As the evening wore on, the tension became suffocating. Bisi tried to engage Tolu, asking surface-level questions about school, but she couldn't maintain attention for long. She was too busy subtly asserting her old dominance. Tolu, instinctively sensing the artifice, began to drift. She would answer Bisi, then look toward the kitchen, toward the woman who was quietly doing the dishes. "I need to talk to Kola privately, sweetie," Bisi finally said, shooing Tolu away. "Go play in your room." Bisi led Kola into the study, closing the door firmly. She started with the tears. "I made a mistake, Kola. I truly did. That life overseas, it was empty. I realized the only life that mattered was here, with my family, with you." She took his hands, looking at him with the fierce intensity he remembered. We can fix this. We can be a family again. But we need to be clear. We have to start fresh. The first thing is to get rid of the nanny. We don't need her now that I'm back. Tolu needs her real mother, not the help. The old dream of a whole family surged within Kola, confusing him. Bisi was glamorous, beautiful, and the mother of his child. But then he remembered the messy apartment, the burnt toast, and the shame in Tolu's eyes, and he realized Bisi had created the void Ife had filled. Ife is not just the help, Bisi, Kola said, pulling his hands away. She is the one who kept Tolu stable while you were gone. She is the one who made this house a home again. Bisi scoffed. Please, she's a maid. Don't confuse gratitude with love, Kola. Tolu doesn't need a temporary replacement. She needs her real mother back. Choose your family, Kola. Choose us. Kola felt the conflict ripping him apart. Bisi was offering him the traditional easy answer, the biological family unit. But his heart belonged to the quiet reality of the life he had built with Ife. He excused himself and walked down the hall toward Tolu's room. The door was ajar. He pushed it open and found Tolu curled up on her bed, crying silently into her pillow. Kola rushed to her side. Honey, what is it? Is Ife going to leave now? She whispered, her voice choked with fear. Because Mom is back. Do I have to choose? The question, so raw and simple, shattered every lingering doubt Kola had about Bisi's presence. Tolu wasn't rejoicing in her mother's return. She was terrified of losing her anchor. No, Tolu, you don't have to choose, Kola promised, hugging her tightly. Tolu pulled back, her eyes pleading. But she makes you smile, Daddy. Ife. She helped me with my fractions, and she always remembers my favorite fruit. She never made you angry like Mommy used to. I don't want her to go. In that moment, Kola finally understood the simple truth. A family wasn't defined by blood or title, but by the person who consistently showed up with love and care. Ife was Tolu's stability, her security, her gentle reminder that the world was still good. Ife was the mother Tolu needed. He wiped Tolu's tears. Ife is not going anywhere, I promise you, never. He settled Tolu down, his decision fully formed. He walked back toward the kitchen, needing to speak to Ife before he faced Bisi. He found Ife standing by the counter, not washing dishes, but zipping up a modest suitcase. Ife. What are you doing? Ife looked up, her eyes sad but resolute. I'm packing, Kola. I heard the conversation. Bisi is back. She wants her family. I won't be the problem. For Tolu's sake, you need to try to mend things with her mother. Stop, Kola said, stepping forward and placing his hand on the zipper, stopping her action. Don't you dare leave. Not now, and not ever. Ife's eyes widened, confused. Kola, please. You have to try for Tolu's sake. I am just the nanny. I respect the boundaries. The boundaries are gone, Ife. They have been gone for months, Kola said, the words tumbling out, laced with desperate honesty. He took her hands, his thumb brushing over her skin. I love you. I am in love with you. You didn't just clean my house. You brought life back into it. You brought my daughter back to me. You are my family, Ife. You and Tolu. I don't want a temporary nanny. I want a partner. A permanent part of this family. Please don't go. Ife's calm facade crumbled. Tears welled up in her gentle eyes, tears of shock and relief. Kola, I have feelings for you too. But I never wanted to cross that line. I respected your pain, your rules. You crossed the only line that mattered. The one from stranger to family, Kola whispered, lifting her hands to kiss them. Their private, tender moment was brutally interrupted by the sound of the study door slamming open. Bisi stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, her glamorous facade cracking into fury. She had overheard everything. How dare you? Bisi shrieked, advancing into the kitchen. How dare you touch him? You absolute thief! You came into my house, took my place, and poisoned my husband against me. Kola stepped in front of Ife, shielding her. She did nothing, Bisi. This is my choice. Your choice? Over your wife? Bisi laughed, a high, harsh sound, devoid of humor. You choose the maid over the mother of your child? The woman you promised to love forever? Kola stood his ground, his voice steady for the first time since she arrived. You stopped being my wife the moment you walked out that door a year ago. I didn't steal anything. She saved everything you abandoned. I am not choosing between a wife and a maid. I am choosing between the old pain and the new life I want to build. The life is with Tolu and Ife, the people who stayed. Bisi, seeing her manipulation fail, turned to her final desperate tactic. She ran to the dining room entrance and called out, her voice dripping with artificial sorrow. Tolu, come here. Your father is making a terrible mistake. Sweetie, come and tell Daddy who you choose. Choose your real mother, darling. Don't let the help win. Tolu came around the corner, her face tight with confusion and fear. She looked at Kola, at the furious glittering Bisi, and finally at Ife, who stood quietly behind Kola, her face a mixture of hope and fear. The room held its breath. Tolu walked slowly, hesitantly. Bisi crouched down, holding out her arms, ready to claim her victory. But Tolu didn't go to Bisi. She walked past her mother, stepped up to Ife, and took the gentle woman's hand, lacing her small fingers through Ife's. That simple, quiet action spoke louder than any shout. It was a choice based on love given, not title held. Bisi stood there, her arms outstretched, completely broken. She realized she hadn't just lost an argument, she had lost her family for good. Her power evaporated. She straightened, her face hard and cold again. Fine, Bisi whispered, defeat etching lines around her mouth. Keep your maid. You deserve the messy life you choose. She walked past them, picked up her bag, and left the apartment, slamming the door hard. This time, Kola knew, she was gone for good. The apartment was silent, but the silence was different now. It was heavy with possibility. Kola, Ife, and Tolu sat down to dinner an hour later. They ate the egusi stew Ife had prepared, but the atmosphere was fragile. Tolu broke the silence, looking from Kola to Ife. Ife, are you my new mummy now? Kola reached across the table and took Tolu's hand. These things take time, sweetie, and Ife is very special to us. How about we start with Auntie Ife? She is already your family, but Auntie is a special role, just for her. Tolu beamed, turning to Ife. Auntie Ife, I like it. Ife smiled, tears welling up again. I like it very much, Tolu. Later that night, after Tolu was asleep, Kola and Ife sat together on the sofa, bathed in the soft glow of the living room lamp. Kola reached out, gently cupping her cheek. Thank you for staying, he whispered. I was never going to leave unless you asked me to. Ife replied, her voice soft. He leaned in and they shared their first kiss. It wasn't dramatic or fiery, but a soft, tender sealing of everything they had survived together, a quiet promise of the future they would build. 6 months later, the Lekki apartment was unrecognizable. The walls were decorated with Tolu's brightly colored drawings. A small library of children's books filled one corner, and the constant smell of baking and stew filled the air. The home was full of laughter. Tunda was a regular visitor, shaking his head and grinning. Ife, you saved my friend from himself. Look at him. He actually wears matching socks now. Kola just laughed, a genuine easy sound. He and Ife functioned as a seamless, loving team, tackling school runs, work deadlines, and life's inevitable small crises together. It was Ife's birthday. Kola and Tolu had decorated the apartment with balloons and streamers. After they presented her with a cake she had obviously helped bake, Tolu handed Ife a card she had made herself. Ife opened the card and her breath caught. The card was carefully decorated with glue and glitter, and inside, in shaky, painstaking handwriting, Tolu had written, To Auntie Ife, you are the best mom in the whole world. I love you. Ife broke down, weeping grateful tears as she pulled Tolu into a fierce hug. Kola wrapped his arms around both of them, his daughter and his chosen partner, and squeezed them tight. He looked around the room, feeling the warmth of the home they had built. He realized the family he had once begged Bisi to maintain was nothing compared to this. This was a family built not from convenience or appearance, but from choice, sacrifice, and an endless stream of everyday, consistent love. Their story did not end with sudden wealth or dramatic fireworks, but with something far more precious. A healed home, a chosen family, and a man who finally understood that love can return to you in the form of a quiet woman who simply knocked on your door with nothing but her kindness and stayed to become his Ife.